Okay guys, and we're back to start setting up the linear workflow in Maya. So let me explain a little bit why we're doing this. A lot of the images, all the JPEGs, PNGs, all the bitmap files that we download from the web are gamma corrected, gamma encoded images. Those images are gamma corrected so they can so they can look correct to our eyes through the screens. Other images such as TIFF files or EXR files or HDR are not gamma encoded. They are linear images. So they could sometimes, when you open them, they could look strange, like either blown out or completely bleached or darker than they should. So what happens is in Maya, what we're trying to do is to use linear workflow so we can gamma correct all these elements, materials, colors, and textures so that we can render it. So when we render it, it looks okay. It looks correct on the screen and to our eyes. So basically, what we're usually when we render something in Maya, and as you can see here from the previous video, we get like a lot of bleached areas and a lot of dark areas too. So the rendering in Maya is really is not taking into consideration any gamma correction. So let's go ahead and start setting this up. I'm going to go to the render settings, and I'm going to enable color management. So what we want to do, usually we have linear sRGB in the input here. We want to output as sRGB, so we want to color correct everything so we can see it on a screen. So that's kind of the layout here. Once we do this, the problem is just by doing that, and I'm going to keep this for comparison, we see that the whole image is completely bleached out. So everything is blown up proportionally higher than before. So if we see this difference, there's a huge difference between these images. So in order to complete this, we have to go and gamma correct each material in the scene. I know that that's not like something that it's not as easy as like with one click, so we have to do it manually. I'm going to start with all the images, all the objects that they contain materials that the color has been replaced with a texture. Like this seat here has an MIA material X, but it doesn't have any color information. The color has been replaced by a texture. When you do this, and the main base color of the material of the object that we're looking at is replaced by a texture, then go to the texture. Make sure that this is probably a JPEG or any texture you have here, especially if it's a bitmap. You just have to make sure that it's an sRGB. Tell it here at the color profile that this image here is an sRGB image. So then we're good with that. Let me go ahead and get the base and do the same thing. Go all the way to the end. We have a blend material. Again, this is replaced by a texture. I'm going to go and make the texture sRGB. Now, for the other ones, there is just a color. Like for instance, everything else is just a chrome, and it's the same exact one. So MI material X2. This is just replaced with a chrome, but this is a procedural texture. There's no actual bitmap involved here. There's a color. The color of the chrome, we can even change it. Let's say I'm just going to change the color of the chrome just so we can see. Let's render that. So we have like more of a pink chrome, and so we can. The reason I did that is so we can see like there's a color here. So the color that's our color for this material. So we have to click on this color here, and then just make sure that this color loads into our library. Just do it a couple of times and make sure it loads. So now we have this color loaded here, and I'm gonna go to my rendering editors, Hypershade, And I'll explain why we need to load this and to keep it into our memory here, to the library. So here's our MI material X, the chrome. So that's my materials. Let me grab this and put it in the work area. So this button here takes our material and drops it down in this work area. And what I need to do is bring the gamma correct utility. Just type gamma up here and then it will show up. Double click on it and it will show up on the work area. Now this is an empty node. Nothing happening yet. Our MI material has color, and we need to actually, what we're going to do is go ahead and gamma correct the color. If you notice here, look at the color on the checker here area, and then let's look at the, if I render that, you can see that it's really bleached out, blown up with the light here. So what I'm going to do is keep this for reference and grab the gamma correct node. Actually, grab the MI material X, go to the gamma correct node, middle click and hold the middle click button and drag and drop that and replace the color. So now this is hijacking the color, so it completely eliminated the color information and went back to black. So now the black one, the black color here, the value needs to change, and we have to go back to our initial one. That's why I kept it on my library, so I can click it and bring it back to our setting here. Now what we do with the gamma correct, we want to color manage that, and we need to add a 0 point. This is the number that we need to, and that's the universal number for doing this linear workflow here. So that will actually manage the gamma for our screen. And now let's go ahead and render that. As you can see now, we're we're getting a better color, and we can go also closer to like. So now this scene has a better. This is sort of a spray paint. It's not a reflection, so it's just so you guys know this was from the texture that I made. So here we have like a better result. Let me just frame this for a final render. I'm going to keep this. Now I'm going to change the settings. So we enabled color management, linear sRGB to sRGB, that's our output. We color managed our textures by going to each texture and making sure that it's in sRGB, and we also color managed our materials, making sure that the colors are being color managed by a gamma utility node, which has 0.454 gamma correct, the gamma correct number, so we can actually see it better on our screen. Now the quality, I'm going to bump this up to 1, and then I'm going to go ahead and make sure we have everything here correct. Final gather is on. We have image size HD 1080, and I think we're good. I mean, I could just do one more thing and grab my area light and just add a little bit of more shadow rays, like about 8, just to increase the quality of the shadows. And let's go ahead and render the final high resolution rendering. Render settings, and let's leave this to render. So mainly that's also called like color management or like linear workflow. It's also called like a tone mapping technique, meaning that we're actually, instead of having very bleached out or high contrast images that we always get from Maya when we render, we actually reduce that problem, and we even out the image. You might say flattening out the image that we get. Therefore, we don't have these like blown up highlights and really dark areas in the background as we had before in the previous image. So the shadow area is more smooth, more subtle, and the highlight area is also more corrected. That way we have a flat image, a flatter looking image, um, evenly out, evened out more, and we can work with any post-production software to always give more contrast if we needed, but we wouldn't never be able to do the opposite, and I'll explain just when this is done so you can see the difference. So this is a very nicely rendered, and with minimum lighting, with minimum effort, we're getting something that we can actually work with. Now if I go back to my previous renderings, so you can see like with that is the image we got with the same settings exactly, of course with less quality, but without linear workflow. This is before the linear workflow. This is after we added the linear workflow, but we did not color manage our props like materials. And this is the final one. So this is it. This is the linear workflow, and it's something that it's something that is really great to use in Maya for rendering, and also always make sure to organize your scene correctly. I mean, I didn't really name my materials. You want to do it. If you are doing linear workflow, make sure you name everything out. Make sure you have you do the gamma correct node for each one as you go. So then you don't have then you don't end up to do it for 200 materials or X amount of materials at the end. Okay, so this was the linear workflow video, and I'm going to explain another lighting technique on the next one.